2020 put out a lot of movies related to the end of the world, and one of the last movies of 2020 related to the end of the world was Greenland. I recently watched it, and I wanted to share some thoughts on it with you all. So stick around for the rest of the video. We're going to talk about the Greenland movie, what you can take away from it in the sense of preparedness, and I want to make sure you know that there will be spoilers. So if you don't want to have the movie spoiled for you, leave now. Hey everybody, it's Magic Prepper, and today we're talking about the Greenland movie, and not really necessarily a review, but we'll talk about what it had in it that it shares with a lot of other end-of-the-world type movies, and what we can learn from that and take away from it in the sense of preparedness. Now, as a quick overview, Greenland is basically a movie that follows a family on their way to Greenland to escape the impending apocalypse brought on by a rogue comet, and that's going to hit the planet and destroy the entire world. And if you're not in a certain type of shelter, aka a bunker of some sort, you're all going to die, okay? And that's basically the premise of the movie. I will say that the movie itself was not very good. We'll talk about a couple things in the movie throughout this video as to why it probably wasn't a very good movie, but at the same time, it did have at least one takeaway that I thought about in the sense of preparedness that we could all learn from and grow from and use as a way of motivation to keep moving forward in our self-preparedness, okay? And if you're worried about preparing for SHTF style scenarios and you watch movies like Greenland and you try to take things away from those movies in the sense of at least getting some mental exercise in during the process, hit the subscribe button below, because we'll keep talking about everything else revolving around SHTF scenarios, and occasionally entertainment, Hollywood, movies, all that stuff can put some things out there that at least give you some decent ideas, whether or not they're an accurate version of what might actually happen in an SHTF scenario. So, in Greenland, basically what happens is comet's on its way towards the planet, everything's played down for a long time, then the government finally has to admit, you know, this thing is probably going to hit, but not really in a big way, just one fragment in the middle of the ocean. Of course that doesn't happen, everything starts hitting the planet and things go berserk. Now, one thing this movie shares with many other movies, and those movies include movies like I Am Legend, World War Z, and 2012, is that there's a will you be chosen scenario in the movie. And what I mean by that is that in these disastrous planet-ending events that they try to make movies about very often, there's generally this shared concept that if you're of a certain status or if you're a certain type of person, you might be chosen by those in power to survive, as in the sense of chosen survivorship. And the idea of that is that because of the skills you have, or because of the money you have, or because of the power you have, or the influence you have, you might be selected to survive this planet-ending scenario, whereas nobody else would, okay? And so what we can talk about is in Greenland, the idea of this whole will you be chosen scenario is brought on by your profession. And in the movie, the main character is a structural engineer. Okay, so obviously after the planet's destroyed, when you want to bring everything back, you have to rebuild. And of course, a structural engineer would be very valuable in that sense, okay? So he is chosen, and they have this giant text message alert thing that goes out, and this giant emergency broadcast alert thing that goes out on public television, basically saying, hey, you're chosen. Sorry, we just told this to you in front of a lot of other people that happen to be in the room. That being said, nobody else got the text message. Nobody else in that room, and pretty much nobody else at all, except for a very, very small amount of people, got that text message. So that's what this movie really made me think about. Would you get the text message? Would you be chosen? Okay? So in 2012, they had the same concept. They built these arcs. They want to save everybody and ride out the giant world-ending flood that's about to occur. And if you weren't chosen, or if you weren't ultra rich and had the ability to buy a ticket on one of these arcs, you were gonna die. So same scenario. Would you be chosen, or would you have the money or the influence or the power to get on board one of those arcs? Even in World War Z, the main character is a UN investigator. So he's chosen to come live on this battleship situation they have in place, or I think it's an actual Air Force carrier. But either way, they are trying to make sure that the people they need to be able to go out and figure out the cure for the scenario are alive. So you have medical researchers, scientists, and military all surviving out on a fleet in the middle of the ocean, okay? So these, and when I said Air Force carrier, I meant aircraft carrier. I fixed it, don't worry. So, and the same thing happens in I Am Legend, but in a different scale. In I Am Legend, He is a medical researcher, a scientist who is trying to figure out how to reverse the effects of the situation that he put in place by trying to create a cure for cancer. And so he is airlifted out of New York, or at least his family is. They're chosen to be airlifted while everyone else is quarantined and has to stay on the island. And then he stays behind, of course, to continue his work. But if he had chosen not to, they would have easily airlifted him away. And of course, we know what happens during that airlift scenario. But unfortunately, that's just how the movie went. So in those movies, they all share that same similar concept. Will you be chosen? And what we have to do right now is look at ourselves in the mirror and be honest with ourselves and say, no, we're not going to be chosen. I'm not one of the 0.01% of people on the planet that the government's going to pick up a phone and say, hey, we need to get you in a bunker because things are about to get real bad. So come on over, we'll fly you in first class and get you all loaded up in the bunker with your family and you're good to go, don't worry. That will never happen for me, and it'll probably never happen for any of you who actually watch this channel, because I'm sure the people who will be chosen are very unlikely to be sitting here watching this channel right now. So that's something we have to understand, that these movies put that out there because it's a common concept, because it's a generally understandable idea for these people to use, in the sense of, if something planet ending was going to happen, governments around the world would select the people they need to operate afterward, put them on an ark or in a bunker or in a spaceship or who knows what, and save their lives because they're going to need them afterward. And I'm not one of those people they're going to save, and neither are you. So we need to be more honest with ourselves about the fact that there is no help coming. When things get really dire and when things really start to fall apart, there will be no help. We have to understand that. And even in this Greenland movie, there was many scenarios that occurred where no help arrived. There's a scene where they're in a pharmacy and people are in there shooting guns and shooting people, and all kinds of stuff's happening because people want to steal the medicine. And of course, there's always some child in every single one of these movies that has like asthma or something. I don't know why they do that, but it's just what they have to do. And in this movie, the kid's diabetic, so they gotta go get insulin, yada, yada, yada. Long story short, no cops ever show up to try to save the day. In fact, I think the only one that does is just there to steal medicine too. The same exact thing that happened in World War Z, actually. So yeah, you tell me how that works. But at the same time, there's even a part in the movie where the mom lets the kid get kidnapped. And he gets kidnapped and taken away, and who's you gonna call? There's nobody to call. The only reason that kid didn't get fully kidnapped is because the military police figured it out, basically, by the kid saying, hey, I'm kidnapped. So, like I said, there'd be spoilers. Either way, these are kind of dumb scenarios, but they illustrate the point that there's no one to help you in these emergencies. And when a mass, wide-scale emergency occurs, there is no one else to rely on but yourself. And that's the one big takeaway I took from that movie. What else did I take from the movie? It wasn't a very good movie. What else did I think about it? Just a lot of silly plot points and a lot of, plot holes that didn't really add up, and silly things like the grandpa gives them a rifle after they've already been through the strife of traveling all the way to grandpa's house. And of course that rifle never gets used, and of course, good thing they never even thought to have a gun at all during that whole time. But anyway, besides that, those are things that I watched and I'm just like, whatever. The whole point of this movie is to let us know we're not going to be chosen. And the same exact things apply to World War Z, I Am Legend, 2012, and a litany of other end-of-the-world movies. And I think it's something that we should all just keep in mind. I'm not going to get the miracle text message. I'm not going to get the, hey, you and your family are saved, congratulations. It's not going to happen. That's why we prepare. That's why I prepare. That's why we should all continue to prepare. So, sorry if you watched this video thinking it was going to be a movie review of Greenland, because the easy way to review the movie is, it kind of sucked, it wasn't a great movie. But, in the sense of preparedness and trying to be more prepared, you can say, well, at least that movie kind of made me think more about the idea of not having anyone else to help me and not being able to rely on my own government to come save me in a time of dire need. And that's exactly what happened in the movie, and that's exactly what would happen in real life. So, if you have any other things to add about this Greenland movie, leave them in the comments below. If you think you'll be saved, like literally, if you're sitting there and I'm like, hey man, I'm a neurologist and I can work on people's brains and I have a lot of research in my head that's very important and valuable, and there's a good reason why the government might decide to save me, let us know in the comments, because I'd be interested to find out what it is that you have that you might be saved for. And of course, everybody else here would probably like to know too. And then maybe if someone's trying to choose a career path, they can say, well, it looks like I'm going to go study for that because, hey, kind of want to be saved one day. But you have anything else for me, magicprepper.com, always a good way to get in contact with me. And without anything else to say about the Greenland movie and what I took away from it in the sense of preparation, that's going to be it for Magic Prepper.